Joining me in studio, he still has a general election to go through against a Green Party candidate and I think a Libertarian, but I'll go ahead and say it, the next congressman representing District 19, Jodey Arrington in studio.
Good morning, Chad.
How are you?
Happy Friday to you and your listeners. I'm doing great.
Good.
I'm doing great. Things just seem to be better this side of the primary. I don't know. The sun shines brighter. The birds
You look a little more relaxed, I have to say.
Well, I am, but I got to tell you, I am until I read the newspaper or I watch the news, and then I just, like every other American, and certainly West Texan, I'm just increasingly concerned about our country. And then coming out of ag meetings, I get concerned about West Texas, since that's the lifeblood of our economy. But all in all, man, I'm blessed. Family's doing great, and still on the campaign trail. Reminding people we have a general election, and also thinking about how we can put District 19 in a leadership position, God willing, when we get there.
That's great. I want to get to that here in a little bit. I want to start off with yesterday. We did have Senator Cruz, who was here in Lubbock, and I think he started off in Amarillo, was here in Lubbock, and then he traveled on, I think, to Abilene. You were with him for, I know, at least the Lubbock portion of that trip. What went on with the ag meeting, with your meeting with Senator Cruz?
Well, he the main purpose of his time in Lubbock was to meet with the ag community, and but I got to spend the day with him, or at least the time that he spent here. I think he got in like 12:30, left at 4:30, but he stopped by also to say hello to the Board of Regents. They were in session. Again, main focus was reaching out to ag. It was listening and learning, I think. Senator Cruz, who I have tremendous respect for, and certainly a champion when it comes to conservatism and sort of social issues, economic policy, foreign policy. I don't know that there's much I would part from on Senator Cruz. However, he has not been that well received in the ag community.
Right.
So that's the reality. And again, I was encouraging the folks, the cotton producer, corn producer. We have a lot of those trade associations that represent these sectors of the ag industry here in Lubbock, actually. But I would encourage them that, hey, he's reaching out to us, and he wants to learn more. And the fact is, we live in the largest cotton patch in the world, and we take for granted that we're immersed in this. He's not. He's from Houston. And so let's open this dialogue, keep it open, and let's see if we can't convince him to have stronger positions on agriculture, ag producers in the United States, trade, tax, regulation, whatever, farm bill, safety net. And I think that's what happened yesterday. I think it was more him listening, and he got an earful, and hopefully he will be open to considering new positions, really, and recognizing that, again, this is not just economics. This is not just jobs. This is an economic development for West Texas alone. This is food and fiber independence, and like energy independence. This was my message to him in the car on the way over. I said, look, this is national security. I mean, what happens when we depend on foreign countries to produce our food and fiber? Mm-hmm. And then what happens when they hold us hostage on that? These are the basic elements of life, and we can't depend on foreign countries or we'll be in trouble. So, he just listened more than anything, but I respect him for coming out, and I know the ag community does as well.
What was, if there were one or two points yesterday that the ag producers, the ag leaders who were in that meeting, that they made towards Senator Cruz? What was the, I guess, one or two major friction points where they wanted him to listen? What does he not understand about ag from their point of view?
I think from their perspective, it seems like that the risk that's involved, it's a different business than other industries, in that you've got tremendous weather risk. You really can't control for that. Our weathermen can't really predict, what's going to happen tomorrow often. And so there's that element of risk, and then there's the global market, the price risk, because I mean, we've all talked about China and India and others, and so that there's the risk involved, which is why you need a safety net. It needs to be a responsible safety net, and one that still incentivizes our farmers to be the most productive and efficient that they can be. But it needs to put them on an even playing field with the players in the global marketplace. I think that's one. The other one is just trade and the World Trade Organization. I mean, this is where Trump's doing a great job, and I wish he'd stay on this issue of America's losing. We all feel that way out here. I mean, we feel like we're losing in so many ways, but on trade, we just feel like we got the short end of the stick. And there's not a better example of that than cotton. And having Brazil and WTO and the WTO community dictating terms to us to where we pull cotton out, it's been a disaster. So I think the trade deal would probably be the second big issue.
Visiting with Jodey Arrington in studio. We're talking about yesterday's visit. Obviously, I'm assuming you had a chance to speak with some of the ag producers yesterday as well. And if not, you've obviously throughout the campaign you've been speaking to a lot of the ag producers. What do they? Obviously, when you go to Washington D.C., what are they hoping to see from you, from a new congressman, in your first term? Because I think there's a lot of high hopes, and during a campaign there are a lot of promises made, there are a lot of things said, and you know, you were on stage with a bunch of guys who also sounded like they were running for president at times, right? Where I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
What do you think the realistic view is, or the wants are for your first term in office
from that industry in particular?
Community.
Well, but I appreciate you framing it that way, because you're right. I mean, we all are ambitious, and you know, campaigns. You're not talking about what you can't do. You're talking about what you can want to do and aspire to do. I think what we can do, and part of this, maybe the majority of this, isn't because of me or any new congressman. Although I'll take that back. I'd say having a passionate supporter and champion for ag from this district to come alongside of the leader of the ag committee in Mike Conaway. Actually, I think that's significant. You know, I was going to downplay that, but actually it's significant. I was going to give more credit to the fact that we have a chairman from West Texas. So the first thing is getting cotton back in the Farm Bill. That is number one. And that's a 2-year out. It may come earlier, but we got to start laying the groundwork now. Now's the time to start preparing for a Farm Bill. That would be the number one thing from this district that would help our producers and our economy and our families, because cotton has a tremendous ripple effect into the local economy. So, cotton, Title I, covered commodity. Don't we rip the safety net out from under it? Mm-hmm. Because of WTO and Brazil, we got to get it back in there.
Visiting with Jodey Arrington. Can you hang out one more segment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Jodey Arrington. He's still running in that general election, getting ready to head to Washington, D.C. We'll talk a little bit more ag, border security as well. He just made a trip down to the border, and we'll get into a few other issues as well. Jodey Arrington when we come back. In studio with me right now for the next segment. And Jodey, you recently made a trip to the border. This was a story that was published on Breitbart, Texas, and you went to what they call the non-photo op border tour.
Yeah, it was certainly not the sign up, buy a ticket commercial tour. It was what I would call off the grid. Which is important, because from what I understand, once the administration knows about it, they will do a dog and pony for you, and things aren't as they as they seem, kind of like that your rearview mirror. Things appear closer than they seem. They appear better than they seem when you go through those channels. And Brandon knows that. Brandon Darby's the reporter there. He's been covering this for years. He is so passionate about it. I respect that tremendously because it's pretty risky. I tell you, being down there, I realize he's not just sitting in an office writing this, these articles. He is, I think, even putting his life at risk going out and doing this. So it was a great experience. It was eye-opening for sure. Chad, there is no effective border security, man. I mean, I know that's not going to surprise you, but there is no effective border security. And the Border Patrol agents, they're not nearly enough of them. There's no way. We went around for hours and didn't see Border Patrol or even local security, local law enforcement in some of the worst neighborhoods probably in America. And that river's just 35 yards maybe across. It's shallow. Yeah. There is stuff strewn everywhere. You know people are coming. Here's the thing that really has been on my mind lately as a result of that. I know we all know people are coming over here. We don't know the bad guys, the good guys, and even if they're the people looking for a better life, they're violating the law. They're not respecting our rule of law, and that's a problem. They're also draining our system from a public service standpoint. And by the way, we can't afford that for our own people, as we've said. However, just the drugs that are smuggled, and there is no way that they can keep up with this. All the meth, all the heroin, all of those drugs that are coming here and destroying our families and enabling the cartels to not just exist but to thrive. How we quantify the cost, the gang violence in Chicago, you can trace a bunch of this, maybe the majority, back to Mexico. Sheriff Kelly Rowe told me that the meth increase has been 800% year over year, and he said it's all coming from Mexico. So there's so many more implications to not securing our border than we think about as Americans, and we think it just pops up in the inner city or it pops up in suburban families. They're dealing with addiction, incarceration rates, rehabilitation. Man, it is a huge strain on the moral fabric of America. There's so much more going on. There's so much more at stake. And there are words for it that I can't use on the radio. I'm so angry about where we find ourselves as a country that we cannot do our stinking first job, and keep Americans safe. And now, it doesn't just affect Americans. Those folks that are coming over here, again, we need to fix the process for the folks that want to come here to work, pay taxes, swear an allegiance to the Constitution. I recognize there's some broken pieces to the immigration system, but they're being extorted, even those folks, because you don't come over here without paying the toll to these cartels. And anyway, I'm glad I did the tour. I may be an angrier American as a result, but that's probably good.
Yeah. Well, is there, after you took this tour, what can be done, you think? What needs to be done? Do we need to see that wall? And even, Donald Trump, who's talked about building a wall, says, hey, even some of these natural barriers like the river, we may not need a wall there or a fence. And as you saw, there's a picture on the Breitbart, Texas, of you holding up flotation devices that are used by the cartels. So obviously it's easy to get over here. So what's the answer? What needs to be done?
When you have, especially in a densely populated area like Laredo, it is one contiguous and continuous, really, city. From the Laredo on this side to the Nuevo Laredo on the Mexican side, which is a much bigger city. So it's just seamless. And in densely populated areas, I believe you absolutely have to have physical barriers. Yeah. And you call it a wall, call it a fence. Let's not get caught up in semantics. Let's figure out the best physical barrier and let's put it in place. You've got to at least slow them down in those areas. And then a lot of it, I think, is just investing the resources, the technologies and tools it is more personnel for sure. And we've got the technology, whether it's drones or whether it's the video cameras or what have you. But it's a commitment at the end of the day. It's not like we don't know. I heard a great quote from Brandon actually about, we don't need comprehensive, how do you put it, comprehensive immigration reform. We need comprehensive border security that has an element of immigration reform, because that's the first and foremost priority for our country. And it does involve personnel, and it does involve technology. So anyway, there's no doubt you can do it, but this administration is not going to do it. Yeah. And God help us if Hillary Clinton is our president. Man, I worry about that. I worry about, what's happened in Arizona with sort of these Minutemen and folks taking matters in their own hands, because they're not going to sit back and wait on the federal government to keep their families safe and protect their private property rights. So, folks, pray for America, and let's pray we get a president that has the sort of policies and the more than that, because everybody has seems to have the same talking points on the Republican side. But who's got the courage? That's one thing about Donald Trump. Okay, say what you want. I've got my own concerns, but he's got courage. Okay, sometimes his courage gets a little ahead of him. Maybe maybe he gets a little too courageous, and he needs to be smarter and wiser and shrewder about how we can win this general. But he's got courage, and that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take, because the answers are there. The plans are all written in probably on pieces of paper, and probably many different comprehensive border security plans. We got to have a leader to lead on that issue.
Let's say we got a couple of minutes left here on the show. As you head towards the general election, what are you going to be doing? What's the plan going into Washington? And you mentioned earlier trying to get ahead of the game.
The plan is, finish well, finish strong, both in my job at Grace Scott Labs, and finish well in the general election. Obviously, my family has a lot of things to think about logistically in this transition. They're excited, but there's a lot to deal with. And then, as you said, looking at not being too presumptuous here, but looking down the road and saying, how do we put District 19 in a leadership position? Because most of my colleagues that will be freshmen are in contested races. And I'm reaching out to them, and I'm reaching out to say, hey, we're pulling for you. I'm excited about the opportunity for you and me to work together. What can I do to help you? Because I want District 19 to be at the head of our class. I want us to be in a leadership role. And I said that throughout the campaign, that just being a vote's not going to help us. Having influence, now that could help West Texas. That could help our country, because our country needs values like West Texas. So I'm doing those things. I think it's the right thing to do. I know it's the right thing to do. I'm committed to it. And let's, hope that, come January when the swearing in and when they make those decisions about who's going to be on this committee and that, we're at the head of the class and we're in a great position.
Jodey Arrington, good to see you again.
God bless you. Good to see you too, Chad.